And hello, I'm Eamonn O'Brien, and you're very, very welcome to the Reluctant Speakers Club Expert Series. And I'm delighted today to be joined by a pal, Niall Devitt. And Niall, of course, you are one of the co-founders of Tweak Your Biz, which is a really well-known online business community. And more recently now, you're the co-founder of a social business group, the Hain Group.
Absolutely.
So delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Eamonn.
And
It's nice to be here.
today we're going to talk about the growing importance of having a personal brand. Mm-hmm. And you're a man who knows a lot about these things. To kick off, what on earth is this personal brand thing, and who needs one?
Yeah, I suppose probably everyone needs one. So just to go back to your introduction, I suppose two things that we know about personal brand is it's become more important, and obviously that trend is increasing. I suppose to define what personal brand is, I suppose it's the perception that the world around you has of yourself. Specifically, I suppose it's how you put your best foot forward. So I think most people would be familiar with something like a CV, for instance. So back in the old days when you went for a new role, you created a CV, and within that CV you put, your qualifications, your achievements, your experiences, all the things that you were good at, all your strengths, etc., etc. I suppose personal branding is very much an ongoing process, very much in that ilk. With the advent of online and some of the social media tools, they've given us the opportunity to, I suppose, consistently build upon our personal brand.
Absolutely. And now, having talked about building on these things, a question many people would ask is, well, does it matter if I'm in a small business versus a medium business versus a large business? Does everybody need to be focused on it?
Yeah, I would say in some respects it probably actually matters more for a small business, specifically a small business owner, because obviously in terms of their overall responsibilities, they're going to contribute in quite a big way to the business. So if they grow their personal brand, their business will probably grow in line with that. That said, I mean, there are a number of examples of much bigger businesses where someone within the organization, who had a very strong personal brand, contributed to quite a large organization. So off the top of my head, thinking of someone like Steve Jobs, for instance, who had a pretty massive personal brand and was able to use that quite effectively.
Joined at the hip.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I suppose definitely for small business owners nowadays, I think it's something that you need to be aware of and work upon. And I would also say, even if you work for larger businesses or corporations, I would still suggest it's something that you need to be aware of and work upon.
I know, I absolutely agree with you. And tell me, what role does your online, your offline brand have on the degree to which people will trust you today, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I suppose, online definitely plays a part. I mean, particularly in Ireland, I think sometimes that we do need to meet with people. We need to look them in the eye, as it were, before we form quite a strong opinion. Yes. But one of the things that, very often comes back to me when I'm speaking at an event or I'm at a networking event or something like that, people will tell me that they have a perception of me from my online persona, and I often find that it's interesting to see if I match up with how they thought I was. I have seen instances of people where I've had a perception based on their online personality, and actually in person they tend to be quite different. And I suppose from a kind of a head point of view, that can be somewhat confusing. So I would say, yeah, absolutely, your online persona is very important, and it plays a very big part nowadays in terms of your overall personal brand. But it's probably as important that it aligns itself with who you actually are, that it's authentic in some way.
No, and I like that, because I think you're absolutely right that you need to be authentic both online and offline. Absolutely. And you used a really important word there. The word consistency needs to be in the sentence. Why is that so important?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really relates to anything that you're trying to build with any aspect of business or really any aspect of your life. Is Rome wasn't built in a day. So I mean, if you're trying to build your personal brand online, it's going to take some time, and it happens in small steps usually rather than very big steps. So I suppose it's important to set aside some time, weekly, daily, and continue to do those things that I suppose will contribute in a positive way to your personal brand over time. And if you look at the graph, it's kind of exponential in the sense that it starts off quite slow, and sometimes you feel like you're not getting anywhere quickly,
Yes.
and then it picks up a little bit of momentum, and then once you get momentum, it starts to pick up, and sooner or later, you're recognized in some way, or indeed you're invited to speak at an event or whatever it might be. And again, even from me right now, I suppose I started off as a sales guy for Tipperary. So if I'm asked to contribute an article to, say, the national press here, or even the national press in the US and stuff like that, I still have a little bit of a smile, because really I suppose it's my online brand, or what I've developed online, that has given me those opportunities. And probably way back 9 or 10 years ago, I probably didn't envisage that was even possible, if I was honest.
Absolutely, and you've experimented in lots of different places, and
Yeah.
of course it's evolved over time. And what about making choices about where you're creating your visibility? Do you have any thoughts or advice that you give people? Let's talk about small businesses and
Yeah, I
making
suppose,
those choices.
Yeah, I suppose, and again, it really depends on who you want to communicate with. So in terms of making the decision as to where I'm going to base myself in terms of myself and my personal brand online, typically speaking, I will look to, well, who is it that I'd like to talk to and communicate with, and are they on that particular
Where are they?
platform?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose from my point of view, that's kind of the way that I look at it. The other thing from an online tools point of view, and again, this is my preference, I typically like to take one platform, learn it pretty well before I move on to the next one. I find that if you kind of try to be all places and all things to all men, it can get somewhat diluted in terms of that. And I suppose the other thing is, and again, to realize that you probably have something interesting to say. Now, it mightn't be interesting to everyone, but I suppose, the nature of the online environment, and I suppose the nature of the world being a very big place, that there are a portion of people out there that will find what you have to say interesting, and really you just need to find them. You don't necessarily need to be able to talk to everyone about everything.
I like that idea, and I think more than that, perhaps it also, by staying and really being involved, you start and you build on the conversation, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing that's probably, certainly in my experience, but I think it holds true for most people, is that you can help other people within your network to build their brand. And what usually happens is they help you to build your brand. So typically, although you might be building your personal brand, you can do that very much in a collaborative type way. And I suppose specifically in terms of my experience, because Tweaker Biz, the website that you mentioned there, is very much a community or a collaborative based. So I suppose my personal brand has come very much from helping other people build their personal brand. And that, if you like, was kind of my focus. And I suppose my personal brand was able to kind of piggyback off the back of that, if you like.
I like that idea, because you use the word help, and I think that's vitally important, talking about how you can really kind of do something for a community where they will basically reflect back, and you will enjoy the benefit of that. What are the most common deadly sins, if you like, you see committed in terms of people not maybe getting as much out of their personal brand, even if they've got a great story?
I suppose that there's very much a balance, I would suggest, in terms of, I suppose, putting your best foot forward. So in other words, you really want to put the best of you out there. And certainly, and again, I don't mean to, I suppose, stereotype in terms of Irish people, but I think sometimes that's not something that comes natural to us, right? It's not in our psyche to, we see that as, who's your man, saying he's so great, and so on and so forth. So there's a little bit of I suppose, an obstacle there that's inbuilt, and we kind of just need to get over that a little bit. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is, you know, you can also fall into the trap quite easily of, you know, saying a little bit too much about yourself.
Yes.
So there's a fine balance there. And even though it might be online, what you'll kind of figure out is people are pretty bright.
Yes.
Right. So they're able to smell, you know, the truth from the waffle pretty easily. So there's a little bit of a balance there, as I say. You know, put the best of you forward, put your best foot forward, but do it in a way that's realistic, authentic, and honest about yourself. And I think if you get that balance right, that's probably the best way to do it. We probably all know people who, you know, as I say, go a little bit too far, and sometimes they're not taken seriously. And again, you know, if it's a professional personal brand, you probably want to be taken seriously.
You absolutely do. Perfect. Listen, Niall, that has been absolutely fantastic. So thank you indeed for coming in. And that's a wrap for today. And if you'd like to learn more about Tweak Your Biz, or indeed about the Hain Group, you can check out the links that you'll see below. And you've been listening to Eamonn O'Brien, and this is the Reluctant Speakers Club Expert Series.